They say grief makes you blind, but it was trust that nearly destroyed me. My daughter-in-law stole my $2.4 billion company and my son's life while I was busy mourning my wife. She thought she had me cornered, broken, but she underestimated the man who built that empire from dust. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how it all fell apart, and how I took it all back. My name is Robert Miller. In this city, that name used to mean steel. It meant power. I built Miller Industries from nothing. I thought I understood pressure. I thought I knew pain. I was wrong. The silence in my house was a physical weight. It was too big, too empty. My wife, Emily, was gone. 40 years together ended by black ice and a speeding truck 6 months ago. I was still walking through fog, still drowning in grief when the second wave hit. I was trying to survive by focusing on the Horizon Project. It was our masterpiece. Emily's dream, my execution. A $2.4 billion venture into sustainable energy. It was the future. It was supposed to be my son's inheritance. David, my boy. He had Emily's kindness and my ambition. We were in the boardroom. The sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the skyscraper I built. We were finalizing the Phase 3 contracts. The air crackled with success. David was explaining solar yields. His voice was strong, confident. Then it just stopped. He paused mid-sentence. He looked at me, his eyes wide, not with excitement, but with confusion. He swayed. "David, you all right?" He didn't answer. He just collapsed. The sound of his body hitting the marble floor is a sound that will haunt me forever. It was the sound of my world cracking open. The hospital was a blur of sterile white walls and the smell of antiseptic. The constant, terrifying beep of machines keeping my only child alive. I sat in a plastic chair, feeling useless. I built skyscrapers, but I couldn't fix my son. The doctors were baffled. A sudden onset neurological condition, they said. Rare, aggressive, no cause, no cure. I was broken. $1 billion contracts meant nothing. I just needed David to open his eyes. And that's when she made her move. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, David's wife of 5 years. She was always polished, graceful, cold. She had a finance degree, sharp as a razor, but she never seemed interested in the grit of Miller Industries. She found me in the hospital cafeteria. I was staring into a cup of bitter coffee. Her hand rested gently on my arm. Her touch felt cold. "Robert, you can't do this alone," she said, her voice soft, dripping with fake sympathy. "David needs you here," she continued, "but the company needs stability. The Horizon Project. It can't stop now. The investors are getting nervous." I looked at her. Her suit was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked tragically beautiful. I felt like I was decomposing. "I don't know what to do, Sarah," I admitted. The words tasted like ash. I never admitted weakness. "Let me help," she urged, leaning closer. Her perfume was expensive, overpowering. "I know the financials, I can hold the reins, just until David is better. We need to protect what you built for him." It made sense. She was family. Who else could I trust? I was desperate, and desperation makes you blind. 2 days later, we met in the hospital's private lounge. My lawyer and oldest friend, Michael, was there. He kept adjusting his glasses, a nervous habit he'd had for 30 years. "Robert, are you sure?" Michael asked, sliding the papers across the table. "Just do it, Michael." "Robert, this grants her significant temporary control," Michael warned. "It's a sweeping power of attorney, over the business operations, and David's medical decisions." I stared at the papers. The words swam before my eyes. "He's my son, Michael," I choked out. "If I lose him, the business means nothing." I looked at Sarah. She gave me a small, reassuring smile. Lies. She always smiled when she lied. I signed. The pen felt heavier than a steel beam. I thought I was saving my family. I was actually giving it away. At first, things seemed fine. Sarah was efficient. Too efficient. She sent daily updates, concise emails. She assured me the Horizon Project was secure. I focused on David. I sat by his bed. I talked to him. I prayed. But David wasn't getting better. He was stable, but trapped, unresponsive, a ghost in his own body. A nagging feeling started growing in the pit of my stomach. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just David's health. A month passed. The fog lifted just enough for me to see clearly. I needed to check on the company. I called Tom, my foreman at the R&D wing. Tom had been with me since the beginning. He always chewed on a toothpick when he was worried. "Hey, boss," Tom answered. His voice sounded strained. "How's the kid? Hanging in there, Tom? Listen, how are the new solar panel designs? Are we ready for testing?" There was a long pause. I heard the faint click of a toothpick breaking. "Tom? Testing?" Tom finally said, his voice rough. "Boss, they shut down the R&D wing 2 weeks ago." My blood ran cold. "What? Who did?" "Mrs. Miller." "Sarah," Tom said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Said we needed to reallocate funds. Laid off half the team. But that wasn't the worst part. It's a ghost town down here, Robert," Tom continued. "She's selling off the heavy machinery, the specialized equipment. The R&D wing was the Horizon project. Without it, the whole thing was dead. This wasn't reallocation. This was sabotage. I drove straight to the office. My office. Adrenaline burned away the grief, replaced by a cold, sharp fear. When I walked into the executive suite, it didn't look like mine anymore. My blueprints were gone. The model of my first factory was replaced by some ugly modern art sculpture that looked like twisted metal. Sarah was sitting at my desk, in my chair. With her was her sister, Jessica, a woman known for her expensive tastes and lack of morals. Jessica always wore too much jewelry. She was sipping champagne, laughing. "Robert," Sarah said, standing up smoothly. She didn't look surprised to see me. That was the terrifying part. "You should be at the hospital." Her tone was condescending, like she was talking to a child. "What are you doing, Sarah?" I demanded. My voice shook with anger. "You shut down R&D. You're selling equipment." Sarah walked around the desk, calm, controlled. "We're pivoting, Robert," she said, smoothing her skirt. "The market is shifting. The Horizon project, as you envisioned it, was a sentimental money pit. A money pit. That technology is revolutionary." "It's speculative," Jessica interjected, examining her diamond bracelet. "We need liquidity. Your methods were outdated, Robert." "Honestly, it's embarrassing. Embarrassing. My life's work. Emily's dream. Get out," I said to Jessica. She just smirked. I turned to Sarah. "We need to talk. Now. Reverse the sales." "I think not," Sarah replied, her eyes cold and hard. "I have a meeting with the investors. And frankly, Robert, you don't have the authority to give orders anymore." She gestured to the door. "I suggest you go back to David. Stress isn't good for you at your age." She dismissed me. From my own office, I stood there, paralyzed by the audacity, the sheer cold-bloodedness. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break that ugly sculpture. But I just stood there, silent. The betrayal was just beginning. The true blow came the next day, the one that brought me to my knees. I needed a break from the hospital. I needed to sleep in my own bed. I needed to be in the house Emily and I had built, the house David grew up in. I drove home. I put my key in the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. The lock had been changed. On my own house. I rang the doorbell. A man I didn't recognize answered. He was huge, wearing a black security uniform. His name tag read Mark. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, blocking the doorway. "I live here," I said, confused. "I'm Robert Miller." "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, I have instructions not to let you in." "Instructions? From who?" Then I saw her. Sarah appeared behind the guard. She was wearing one of Emily's silk robes. The sight of it twisted something deep inside me. It felt like a violation. "It's all right, Mark," she said. She looked at me, her face a mask of fake concern. "Robert, I'm so sorry. We had to make changes." "What changes? Why can't I enter my own home?" My voice was rising. Panic clawed at my throat. "It's about David," she said, lowering her voice. "The doctors agreed he needs specialized, round-the-clock care. He's too fragile to stay in the hospital." She stepped aside, gesturing to the hallway. I could see medical equipment being wheeled in. "We're converting the East Wing into a medical facility," she explained smoothly. "We're bringing him home tomorrow." Relief washed over me for a second. "That's wonderful. We can care for him together." But her next words shattered that relief. "I don't think that's a good idea, Robert," she said softly. The relief vanished. replaced by cold dread. Your presence, it's disruptive, she continued. You're grieving, you're emotional. David needs calm. The doctors insisted we limit visitors. It's just too stressful for him. Limit visitors? I'm his father, and I am his wife. The softness vanished, replaced by steel. And thanks to you, I am in charge of his care and this company. This house is now the operational headquarters for the Horizon restructuring. She leaned in closer. You are a disruption. Sarah, you can't do this. This is my home. David is my son. Not anymore, she said. Her eyes were dead. You gave me control, Robert. I am controlling things. You need to leave. She started to close the door. If you try to force entry, I will have you arrested for trespassing. The door clicked shut. The sound echoed in the quiet evening air. It sounded final. I stood there, paralyzed. On my own doorstep. My wife was dead. My son was critically ill, and my daughter-in-law had just stolen my company, my home, and my son. She had $2.34 billion under her control, and she had thrown me out like garbage. I spent the night in a cheap motel, the kind with flickering neon lights and the smell of stale smoke. I stared at the ceiling. The realization hit me, the force of a physical blow. This wasn't about protecting the company. This wasn't about David's health. This was a coup. And it felt too smooth, too organized. Judging by how fast it happened, it had been planned long before David collapsed. That thought chilled me to the bone. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. The next morning, I met Michael at a greasy diner across town, far from the gleaming towers of Miller Industries. She locked me out, Michael, I said, staring into the bitter coffee. She won't let me see David. She's stripping the company for parts. Michael looked grim. He looked old. Robert, I've been digging. What she's doing is ruthless, but technically, it's mostly legal. Legal? How can it be legal? I slammed my fist on the table. The cutlery rattled. The power of attorney you signed is incredibly broad, Michael sighed. As long as she can argue her decisions are in the best interest of the company and David, our hands are tied. Selling off the core technology isn't in the best interest of the company. It's sabotage. Not unless we can prove fraud or malicious intent, Michael said. And she's smart, Robert. Her paperwork is flawless. She documents every decision as a necessary restructuring. Despair threatened to swallow me. I had legally authorized my own destruction. I handed her the knife, and she slid it right into my back. But I wasn't done fighting. I needed information. I needed proof. I went back to the R&D facility. It was heartbreaking. Padlocked gates, empty loading bays. But I built that place. I knew a back way in, an old service tunnel. The inside was worse. Labs gutted, computers gone, wires hanging from the ceiling. A graveyard of innovation. I found Tom in his old office, packing a box. The last man standing. Tom, what happened? Where did it all go? Tom sighed. He looked defeated. She sold it all, Robert. The patents, the prototypes. Everything sold for pennies on the dollar. It was a fire sale. To who? Who bought the core of the Horizon project? Some shell corporation. Tom spat the words out. Nexus Global Holdings. Never heard of them. Nexus Global Holdings. Never heard of them. Nexus Global. It had to be connected to Sarah. The transfer was fast, Tom added. It felt organized, like they knew exactly what they wanted, before she even took over. My mind raced. I needed leverage. Tom, I need access to the server logs, the emails, the data transfers. Tom shook his head, his expression bleak. She wiped the servers, boss. Completely. First thing she did, hired a specialized team. There's nothing left. She had erased my life's work, the future I was building. The vice around my chest tightened. She was thorough. I had underestimated her. I left the facility with a new sense of purpose. This wasn't just greed. This was systematic destruction. Michael started the trace on Nexus Global. He brought in a specialist, Ava Chen, a forensic accountant who specialized in tracking ghosts. These shell corporations are designed to be untraceable, Ava P. explained, her eyes intense as she scanned the data streams. Layers of offshore accounts. But everyone leaves a digital footprint. While Ava worked the digital angle, I focused on the human element. David, if Sarah was capable of this level of deceit, what was she doing to my son? I staked out the mansion. Security everywhere, an army protecting the stolen throne. David was home, but I couldn't reach him. I saw nurses coming and going. All new faces, hired by Sarah. And I saw Jessica. Jessica was Sarah's weakness. More reckless, more flamboyant. They were close, but there was always rivalry. If I wanted to break Sarah, I had to crack Jessica first. I followed her. Downtown, a high-end hotel bar. She was drinking a bright pink cocktail. I sat next to her, Jessica. She turned, surprised. Robert, my goodness. You look stressed. A smug smile played on her lips. Who is Nexus Global Holdings? I asked. No small talk. She laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. Straight to business. I always liked that about you. Too bad you're so trusting. Tell me, Jessica, if you are involved, you will go down with her. I leaned in close, my voice low. Dangerous, she laughed again. You can't touch us, Robert. You're an old man who signed his life away. It's over. You lost. Go find a park bench. Her arrogance was staggering. She truly believed they were untouchable. That fueled the cold rage within me. You're running Nexus, aren't you? I stated. It wasn't a question. She paused, emboldened by the alcohol. Let's just say I helped facilitate the transition. Then she dropped the bomb. Nexus Global is just a holding pen, she admitted, her eyes gleaming with greed. We're auctioning off the patents next week. The Horizon project is worth so much more when it's broken into pieces. They weren't just stealing, they were destroying a technology that could change the world. Emily's dream, just for a quick profit. The betrayal was staggering. But I had confirmation. This was fraught, intentional destruction of company value. I called Michael. We have her. Jessica admitted they are auctioning the patents. That's good, Robert, Michael said, but it's still your word against hers. A drunken confession isn't enough for a warrant. Ava's close, but we need concrete proof linking them to Nexus. We were close, but proof seemed impossible to find, and time was running out. The next day, I tried to access my personal accounts. I needed funds to keep Ava working, to survive. Locked out. All of them. My savings. My investment. Everything. I called the bank manager. Jonathan Hayes. I'd known him for 20 years. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, Hayes said. His voice was shaking. He was terrified. Jonathan, what is going on? Your accounts have been frozen pending a financial audit, he stammered. Mrs. Miller, as your power of attorney raised concerns about recent transactions. She suggested you might be moving money offshore illicitly. She hadn't just locked me out. She had framed me. She had cut me off completely. I was broke. I couldn't even afford the motel room. I was homeless, stripped of everything I owned. The humiliation was almost worse than the betrayal. A lifetime of security vanished overnight. I had to rely on Michael's charity just to eat. But something was brewing beneath assurance. Something darker than money. David. I couldn't shake the feeling. His illness. It came on too suddenly. In the boardroom, just as the Horizon project was finalizing. And he wasn't improving even with the best care money could buy. It felt wrong. It felt manufactured. I needed to talk to his original doctor, Dr. Lee, a renowned neurologist. Sarah had replaced him when she moved David home. Fired him, actually. Why replace the best, unless the best was asking too many questions? I waited outside Dr. Lee's private practice. He came out late, tired. Dr. Lee, I'm Robert Miller. Mr. Miller. I heard you were having a tough time, he said. Too cautious, guarded, Dr. Lee? I need the truth about my son. Before he was moved, was he getting better? Dr. Lee hesitated. He looked around the parking lot. His condition was complex. We were managing his symptoms, but the lack of response was troubling. What symptoms? Sarah just says he's weak. The tremors, Dr. Lee listed. The cognitive decline, the severe muscle fatigue. They were persistent. Then he said something that stopped my heart. It didn't fit the profile of the neurological conditions we were testing for. It was like his system was shutting down, piece by piece, without a clear cause. The symptoms he described, they sounded like something else, something darker. Doctor, did you run a comprehensive toxicology screen? My heart pounded. Of course. When he was first admitted, it was clean. No heavy metals. No common toxins. Run it again, I urged. Test for rare toxins. Synthetic compounds. Things you wouldn't normally look for. Dr. Lee looked skeptical. Mr. Miller, there was no indication of poisoning. He is my son. I grabbed his arm. Desperate. If there is even a chance he is being harmed, you have an obligation. Mrs. Miller controls his medical directives. Dr. Lee pulled away, his face conflicted. I no longer have access to his samples. Sarah is the one doing this, I hissed. If I do this and I am wrong, Sarah will destroy my career, he said firmly. She already threatened to sue me for malpractice when I questioned her treatment plan. I need probable cause, Robert. I need something tangible. I need proof. I had nothing but a terrifying instinct that my son was being murdered right under my nose. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. It was that moment I knew I had to cross the line. I had to find proof. I needed leverage, and I needed to see David. I went back to the mansion. I couldn't get in the front, but I built this place. I knew every inch of it. There was a weak spot in the fence, near the old oak tree, hidden by the hedges Emily had planted. I slipped onto the property under the cover of darkness. The moon was full, casting eerie shadows. The house was lit up, music, laughter. Our Sarah was hosting a party, celebrating her victory while my son lay dying in the east wing. The cruelty was breathtaking. I crept towards the east wing, avoiding the security patrols. I knew their routes. I knew the blind spots in the cameras. I found David's window. The blinds were drawn, but there was a small gap. I peered inside. He was there, lying in a high-tech medical bed, hooked up to machines. He looked so small, so frail. My heart ached, my strong, brilliant son reduced to this. A nurse was in the room, checking his IV bag. Young, nervous. Her name tag said Anna. She finished her checks and left the room. David was alone. I had to get in there. I needed to see his charts. I needed to know what they were giving him. I jimmied the window lock. Old, sticky. I slipped into the room. The beep of the machines was loud in the silence. The air smelled sterile, artificial. I walked to David's bedside. Up close, he looked worse. His skin was gray. David, I whispered, I'm here. I'm going to fix this. I promise. I looked at the IV bag, standard saline solution and vitamins. But there was a small port for injections. Footsteps in the hallway. Voices. Coming closer. I ducked behind the heavy curtains. The velvet felt thick against my face. The door opened. Sarah entered the room. She was wearing a stunning evening gown. Diamonds glittered at her throat. She was holding a small, unlabeled vial, filled with a clear liquid. Is the nurse on break? She asked. Someone in the hallway. I recognized the voice that replied. Jessica, yes, Anna is gone for 30 minutes. Are you sure about this dose? We don't want him crashing before the auction. He's stronger than he looks, Sarah said. Her voice was ice cold, clinical. This will just ensure he remains stable, quiet. Stable. She meant paralyzed. Dying. She walked to David's bed. She drew the liquid into a syringe. Her hands were steady. No hesitation. No remorse. My blood ran cold. I knew, with absolute certainty, what I was witnessing. My nightmare was real. I was watching my daughter-in-law murder my son. She injected the contents of the syringe into the IV port. She stood there, watching the fluid drip into his veins. Her expression wasn't concern. It was calculation, like she was balancing a ledger. Then she turned and left, taking the vial with her. Jessica followed, closing the door softly. I waited until the hallway was clear. My legs were shaking, my edges blurred with rage and terror. I rushed out from behind the curtain. I needed proof. I couldn't take the IV bag. It would trigger the alarms. I looked in the medical sharps container. The red plastic box near the bed. There it was, the syringe Sarah had used. She had tossed it carelessly. I carefully retrieved it. A drop of the liquid still inside. It wasn't much, but it might be enough. It was proof. I slipped back out the window and disappeared into the night. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had the proof. Now I had to use it before it was too late. I went straight to Michael's house. I banged on his door in the middle of the night. He opened the door, alarmed. I showed him the syringe. I was gasping for breath. "She's poisoning him, Michael," I said, the words tumbling out. I saw her inject this into his IV. Jessica was there. "They are killing him." Michael's face turned pale. He stared at the syringe. "Robert, if this is true, this changes everything," he whispered. "This isn't just fraud. This is attempted murder. We needed to get this tested." Now, Michael knew a private Ave. Discreet. Fast. We drove there in silence. The syringe sat in the cup holder. The most terrifying thing I had ever held. The next 24 hours were agony. I paced Michael's office. Waiting. Rage. Guilt. Fear. I had let this happen. I had trusted her. I had put my son in the hands of a monster. I failed him. I failed Emily. Finally, the call came. Michael put it on speaker. "We have the results," the lab technician said. His voice was grim. "The substance in the syringe," he continued, "is a synthesized beta blocker, combined with a powerful experimental sedative. It's nasty stuff," he continued. The words hit me like punches. In high doses, it mimics the effects of a severe neurological disorder, paralysis, cognitive decline, eventually cardiac arrest. It essentially suffocates the nervous system. The confirmation hit me like a punch to the gut. It was real. "Is it traceable?" I asked.
"That's the scary part," the technician said. "It's designed to be almost undetectable, unless you are specifically looking for it. It metabolizes quickly. You got lucky finding the syringe. She was killing him slowly, making it look natural." "Why?" I whispered, staring at the wall. "Why not just take the company? Why hurt David?" "Control, Robert," Michael said, his voice tight with anger. "With David incapacitated, she gained control through you, using your grief. If David died, she would inherit his shares outright. No power of attorney needed. She would have everything, permanently. The $2.4 billion Horizon project wasn't the target. David was the target. We had the proof. But we needed to act fast. "We need to get David out of there," I said, the panic rising. "If she realizes we know, she might give him a final dose." We were racing against time. We contacted the police. Detective Ramirez. Sharp. No nonsense. He reviewed the lab report and my statement. "This is a serious accusation, Mr. Miller," Ramirez said, skeptical. "Your daughter-in-law has a spotless record, and she has legal control." "She is murdering my son," I shouted. "The lab report is compelling," Ramirez admitted. "But we need more. We need to prove motive. We need the fraud connection." "We're still waiting on Ava Chen," Michael said. "The Shell Corporation is buried deep. We can't link it to Sarah or Jessica." "Not yet." "Then we are nowhere," Ramirez said flatly. "I can't get a warrant to raid the Miller mansion based on one syringe that you obtained illegally. So we do nothing?" I demanded, furious. "We wait," Ramirez said. "The auction. When is it?" "Tonight," I said. I couldn't wait. I couldn't leave David in that house. The day was torture. I felt helpless. Then, an hour before the auction was set to start, Michael called. "Ava did it," he said, exhausted but triumphant. "She found the link, a wire transfer from the Nexus Global account to a private bank in the Cayman Islands, registered in Jessica's name." "It's enough," I said. "It's everything." The timing had to be perfect. The patent auction was tonight. Sarah was hosting a gala at the mansion, a celebration with the bidders.
It was the perfect cover. The evening was cool, crisp autumn air. I stood at the edge of the property, Michael beside me. Detective Ramirez and his team were hidden in the shadows. Police cars waiting. Lights off. "Are you ready, Robert?" Michael asked. "I've never been more ready," I said. My grief was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I wasn't fighting for money. I was fighting for my son's life. We walked up the driveway. The security guards recognized me. "Mr. Miller, you are not allowed on the property," the head guard, Mark, said, stepping forward. "It's all right," Michael said, handing him an envelope. "This is a court order granting Mr. Miller access and suspending Mrs. Miller's power of attorney." Detective Ramirez stepped out of the shadows. "And this is a warrant for the arrest of Sarah Miller and Jessica Stone." The guard froze. He reached for his radio. Ramirez stopped him. "Don't," Ramirez said quietly. "It's over. We didn't wait. We walked straight into the house." The party was in full swing. Music, champagne, the elite of the city, mingling with the vultures who came to buy my company. Sarah was standing in the center of the grand hall, a shimmering silver dress, the queen of her stolen kingdom. Jessica, by her side, flushed with victory. She saw me enter. Her smile faltered. The music seemed to stutter. "Robert," she said, her voice tight. She quickly masked her shock with anger. "What are you doing here? I told you to stay away." "It's over, Sarah," I said. My voice cut through the room. The room fell silent. Everyone turned. "Guards," Sarah shouted. Panic flared in her eyes. "Get him out of here. He's trespassing." But the guards were being detained by the police. "What is the meaning of this?" one of the bidders, Sterling, demanded. "The meaning," I said, walking towards Sarah, "is that your brilliant CEO has been systematically dismantling Miller Industries for her own profit." I looked at Jessica, selling it piece by piece to Nexus Global Holdings. Jessica gasped. "He's lying. Robert, you're delusional. Grief has made you paranoid." "Is it paranoia that Nexus Global is registered in your name, Jessica?" Michael stepped forward, holding the folder. Ava Chan's evidence. "We have the documents, the wire transfers, the emails coordinating this fraudulent auction." The bidders started murmuring, nervous, angry. They realized they were part of a fraud. Sterling looked furious. Sarah's face was a mask of fury. "This is slander. I saved this company. The Horizon project was a failure. Robert was running it into the ground." "That's not the worst part," I said. My voice shook with emotion. I looked at Sarah, locked eyes with her. I wanted her to know that I knew everything. "David, my son, he isn't sick." Sarah froze. The blood drained from her face. The first crack in her icy facade. "He's being poisoned," I continued, my voice rising, echoing in the silent hall. "For months, slowly, methodically, by the woman who vowed to love and protect him." The room erupted in chaos. Gasps. Shouts. Sarah started to panic. "He's insane. I would never hurt David. I love him. He's my husband." "We know about the synthesized toxins, Sarah," Detective Ramirez said, stepping forward. "The beta blocker. The sedative. We found the syringe you used last night," I added. "The lab confirmed it. We know exactly what it is." Sarah looked wildly around the room, searching for an escape. The walls were closing in. She looked at Jessica, pleading. "Tell them, Jessica," she begged. Jessica looked at her sister, then at the police officers moving closer. Self-preservation kicked in. Jessica always chose herself. "I didn't know about the poison," Jessica cried, backing away from Sarah. Her voice was shrill. "I only helped with the finances. Nexus was my idea, but the poison—" "That was all Sarah." Sister turned against sister. "The betrayal was complete. She told me David was sick." Jessica continued, pointing a trembling finger. "She said she was administering his medication." "I swear." Sarah saw the net closing. Her face contorted with rage. In a desperate, final act, she ran. She sprinted towards the east wing. "She's going to David," I shouted. I knew what she was thinking. A final dose to silence him forever. I chased after her, Ramirez and his officers close behind. She burst into David's room. The nurse on duty, Anna, screamed. Sarah rushed to the medical cabinet. She was fumbling with the lock, looking for the vial. I tackled her before she could reach it. We crashed to the floor, shattering glass, medical supplies scattered everywhere. You monster, I screamed, pinning her down. You did this for money? For power? Her eyes were wild, filled with hatred, spitting fury. It should have been mine, she shrieked. David was weak. You were weak. I deserved it all. I earned it. The police pulled me off her. They handcuffed her. Reading her rights. She was still screaming as they dragged her out, screaming about her money, her company. I rushed to David's bedside. He was still unresponsive. The machine still beeped, but he was safe. Medics rushed in. Ramirez had them waiting. They immediately started to stabilize him, removing the tainted IV lines. It's okay, son, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I brushed the hair from his forehead. It's over. She's gone. The aftermath was complicated. Sarah and Jessica were arrested. The news exploded. The scandal rocked the city. Miller Industries stock plummeted. The Horizon Project was in shambles. But we had David. He was transferred to a secure hospital. Dr. Lee took over his care. He was guilt-ridden for not listening to me sooner. He dedicated himself to reversing the effects of the poison. It was a slow process. The toxins had ravaged his system. I sat by his side every day. I talked to him about Emily, about the future, about rebuilding. I wasn't going to let him go. Weeks turned into a month. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but David remained trapped. And then, one afternoon, I was reading the newspaper. The financial section. I felt a slight pressure on my hand. I looked down. David's fingers had moved. They twitched against my palm. David? His eyes flickered. Slowly, painfully, they opened. He looked at me, confused, weak, disoriented. Dad? His voice was rough, barely a whisper. I'm here, son, I said, gripping his hand. Relief so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. I'm right here. You're safe. David's recovery was long, difficult. Months of physical therapy, counseling to deal with the trauma of his wife's betrayal. But he fought. He fought with a strength I didn't know he possessed. We rebuilt our relationship. The shared trauma forged a bond stronger than steel. The company was harder to save. Sarah had done significant damage, but with Michael and Ava Chen's help, we nullified the sales. We recovered the stolen patents. It took years, but we rebuilt together. Sarah and Jessica were convicted. Fraud, attempted murder. Sarah received a life sentence. Jessica testified against her sister and received 20 years. A few months after the trial, I received a call. Sarah was Megan's to see me. I didn't want to go, but I needed closure. I needed to see the woman who destroyed my life. One last time. I went to the detention center. The air was heavy, smelling of disinfectant and despair. She sat behind the reinforced glass. Orange jumpsuit, her hair dull, makeup gone. She looked small, defeated. Robert, she said, picking up the phone. Her voice trembled. You have to help me. This is all a misunderstanding. I stared at her. I couldn't believe the audacity. Jessica, she set me up, she pleaded. The poison was her idea. I was just trying to protect the company. I looked at her, and I felt nothing. No anger, no hatred, just emptiness. You poisoned my son, I said. My voice calm. You stole my legacy. You wore my wife's clothes while you murdered her child. Please, Robert, she begged. Tears streamed down her face. Fake tears. I can help you rebuild. I know the financials. Just tell them it was a mistake. She was still bargaining, still manipulating, right to the end. Goodbye, Sarah, I said. I hung up the phone and walked away. I didn't look back. I realized something that day. My legacy wasn't the Horizon Project. It wasn't the $2.4 billion. It wasn't the empire. My legacy was my son. It was the strength to endure the unimaginable, the resilience to rebuild from the ashes. David eventually took over the company. He runs it differently than I did. He has Emily's heart. He focuses on the people, the ethics, the impact. The Horizon Project is thriving now, changing lives. Just as Emily envisioned. I retired. I spend my days in the garden. Emily planted. The house is quiet again. But it's not the silence of grief. It's the silence of peace. I lost everything, but I found the only things worth building. Things that cannot be stolen. Love, trust, family. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your time matters.